Welcome back to the third part of Gait. This is going to be a very small portion, and what we had seen in the previous parts is in the part one we saw that gait adaptability is one of the characteristics of human gait, where we can adjust to the different kinds of environment. In the second part, we saw how does the basic gait pattern come around and how the brain controls it. We saw in this part that it comes out by synergistic activation of multiple muscles, and this synergistic activation is brought about by structure called a central pattern generator. We also saw what are the forces that were acting in order to support the gait movements which are primarily happening. Now, in this last part of normal gait, we are going to look into certain other requirements which are basically necessary when we are trying to walk, and it's going to be more about postural control. So, whenever we are walking, it's not only that we move in a forward direction, we also should understand that whenever we walk, there are forces which act on the body. Now, in the previous section, we saw what are the forces which are helping the body to progress. Now, we have to think about when we are walking, what forces are acting on us. And I want you to think over what is that force that acts continuously on the body all the time, whether you're walking slowly, whether in whichever environment you're walking, what's that force? I hope you would have guessed correctly that it's the force of gravity. So whenever we walk, the force of gravity is going to keep on pulling us. It will be pulling us down. If we are going more forward, it will be pulling us down in front, and if we are going back, we might trip and fall back. So a force is consistently acting, and the body has learned how to overcome this force and yet keep moving in a forward direction rather than going down in a downward direction, right? And now we said that we'll be looking into initiation of gait during this part. I had promised you previously. So the postural control system comes into activation even before walking starts. Whenever we start, we get up from a chair or we get up from some place, we then stand and then we start taking our first step. So when you're standing, you have a requirement for balance, but we need to understand that during whenever a person is standing, the muscles which will be working in order to maintain your postural control are different than the muscles which help you when you're initiating a gait. Now, during standing, we all know that the center of mass is going to lie on the center, right? But if you're going to lift one leg, what's going to happen is your center of mass has to move on the side. So every one of us would think that, okay, to lift a leg, my hip flexor has to act, but it's not the truth. If your center of mass has to move, because if your center of mass is going to be in the center and you're lifting a leg, then you're going to fall onto the side where the leg is there, where the leg is you're going to fall onto the side where the leg is moving, right? So what needs to happen is, even before you lift your leg, the center of mass has to start moving towards the center of the stance leg. So your hip abductors and adductors would be the first muscle which will come into action whenever you are trying to take a step, and the hip flexor is the last group of muscle which becomes activated when you take your first step. In this way, we see that by maintaining the center of gravity, you are prevented from falling down. Your postural control is being maintained. Without this, you will not be able to progress further, right? Now, as you progress, what happens is the stance leg goes to the swing, and the opposite limb, that is your other limb which was in swing, has to come onto the ground in order to prevent the pull of gravity. So this requires activation of all the groups of extensor muscles in order to prevent the prevent ourselves from going to the ground. So that is the second one. The other requirement is when you're walking, your head, arm, and trunk also need to maintain a vertical position. If it moves farther forward or backward, we will be destabilized, and so your hip extensors and your lumbar extensors predominantly work in order to maintain it in a straight position. So we need to understand that whenever you are going to initiate a gait, you require a different group of muscles, and when you are going to keep maintaining your balance as you walk, you require a different group of muscles, right? So primarily, the third requirement for a successful gait and uh, is maintenance of postural control. So progressing forward is one of the requirement. Our ability to adapt is another requirement, and maintaining a postural control during the whole period of gait is a third requirement. And we need to understand this, like how we saw the central nervous system is involved, the musculoskeletal system is involved in generating forces and helping out even during this particular phase, that is during postural control. There are a lot of structures which act, and when you study about the neurophysiology of postural control, you will understand what are all the systems that are involved in maintaining a normal postural control. A similar kind of system but slightly different from that will be active during the entire phase of gait in order to help us in walking. So in summary, what we need to understand is gait is influenced by multiple factors. One is individual level factors like your cognitive, sensory, or musculoskeletal system. All these have to work together in order to produce proper activation, and that's how a gait would be able to initiate it. Next is a task constraint. We saw that there are three different task constraints, and it's not just three. When you go to different environments, the constraints might be varying, but primarily you need to be capable of progressing forward. Your postural control should be good, and adaptability is required. So the interplay of body systems and neural control helps in appropriate kinematics and also in their variations. And lastly, your environment is a very important factor, and this environment, depending on the environmental constraint, your gait has to change, and it needs to vary in terms of step length, speed, cadence, direction, and the like. So your gait, whatever you're seeing in a person, is the resultant factor of all the three factors which are coming in. That's the task requirement, the environmental requirement, and the internal body system, how it is helping it to be produced. So that completes the portion on normal control of gait. For any of the clarifications, you can always send a mail to me, or below the you can comment in the comment box and I will answer you. Thank you for your patient listening. I hope you would have understood the whole how a normal gait is being controlled. Thank you. You can refer the Shumway Cook Theory and Application, the chapter on normal mobility for this.